Yeah, so we're going to wait about 5 minutes for people to get in. Thank you all so much in the chat. We love you guys coming in. We've got about 21 people watching now. We're going to start in just a few minutes. We do have some giveaways for tonight. Emma is in the chat, and she's going to be making sure that you guys know all of the stuff that we need to do for giveaways. I'll give you some details as the event goes on. We've got some great people here. Lindsay's out in Montana. What's the weather like out there, Lindsay? It looks beautiful at your window.
It's warm. It's been snowing here the past couple weeks off and on, and so it's nice to have a beautiful day.
Yeah, snow. Those of us in Winnipeg know that well. Do you have any snow on the ground still?
No, a little bit around some edging, but not on the grass, no.
Okay. Now, Sharon and Allie and myself, we're all in Winnipeg, so we know about snow on the ground.
I'm sure, yeah. We're all in northern climates.
Exactly, and that whole let's do all the seasons in one day thing that we've been having, because there's nothing better than being on lockdown and like literally watching an entire calendar. It's snowing, it's raining, it's melting, it's sunny.
Now
we should. Good thing I don't have to go out because I don't have to figure out what to wear.
We should have a side bet going on as to which household is going to have somebody wander through the back of the shot first.
It will not be mine.
Probably won't be mine.
I am loving watching Zoom meeting fails. Like these are by far the most exciting things right now.
My bet goes for 7-year-old granddaughter looking for glue stick, scissors, or some other crafting supply. Just saying.
And that's okay. That happens.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, welcome here. I see some people in the chat. Shelly, welcome here. Daniel, welcome here. We've got about 28 people now watching us, which is pretty cool. So we're really excited. We're going to start in just a couple of minutes of the book launch. We're just waiting for a few more people to come and join in. We have lots of giveaways to give away today of the book, of some jewelry, of some other exciting things. And so we'll keep you apprised. We got some fun games we're going to play tonight, and we need you in the chat also contributing. So we're pretty excited about that. Out of all of us here in the group, who had the most legendary day? Let's just start this, and you have to justify this. Nobody.
No.
I mean, legendary doesn't have to be positive, I guess.
Okay, well, I played a game of League of Legends because I was like, I can't just sit around waiting for this book launch being nervous, so I have to do something. And we stomped the other team, so that was pretty legendary.
Okay, that's fair. I was actually thinking if anybody gets nervous for tonight, a good thing to deal with, I've found, is just picture everybody without their pants on. As per all Zoom meetings now.
Wow. One way.
Is anybody wearing pajamas?
I think Allie has the most legendary day just because she has a book launch today.
Exactly.
Oh, sure.
Exactly.
That's the winner right there.
I've got to run a live stream. Doesn't that count? No, that's fair. We'll make it all about Allie coming up. Do you think we should? I think we should get started. We're with everybody here in the chat. Welcome here, Naomi, Robert, Sam. We welcome you all here. It's going to be exciting. Yvonne, welcome. Pretty excited here tonight. This is an auspicious day for us. Because this wasn't our original intent. We were going to have a live book launch, and we had like things planned and ready to go, a venue booked, we were ready to announce it, and then the world blew up, and things changed and plans changed, and so we just kind of have to roll with the punches, and we're going to go with that tonight. Hopefully we have no tech troubles. If we do, we'll work through it together. We're kind of in this whole thing together, so we're just going to go with that and see what we can do. So without further ado, good evening, and welcome everyone to the book launch of Super Sick, Making Peace with Chronic Illness, written by none other than Allison Alexander. Woohoo! You guys can cheer too, because I can't hear anybody, and it just helps out a bit. That works. Feel free to interact. I'm Kyle Rudge. I'm going to be your host for evening tonight, and we have a lot of things planned for tonight. We have several giveaways, a rousing game of something called Actually with our guests, question and answer period, and of course we're going to do a rating from the book. It is a bit strange. Like I was saying, we were supposed to be at McNally Robinson doing this, and it was supposed to be planned for May 12th, which was International Day of Chronic Illness, and so we thought that kind of worked. But because we knew that we had to cancel the event, the book was done, and everything was all going on, Allie was like, hey, Kyle, let's move the launch date up a month and just do do it online. So she owes me for this.
I do. Also, I found out it's National IBS month or something.
Oh.
So that counts.
Okay, that does count. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our first giveaway is going to be rather simple. We want to get the word out about the stream and what we're doing here tonight. So if you could share this live stream on Facebook or Twitter, that'll get you entered. Emma Scrumita, she's our publicist. She's in the chat, and she's going to be interacting with you guys all evening long. She'll be answering any questions and running all the contests from there. So everybody who's in the chat, could you please just write hi Emma right across there so she knows who you are. When you do share the stream via Facebook, we are notified. If you want to share it via Twitter, just make sure that you have our little @ at Mythos and Inc. so that we see that you shared it. You have until after Allie's book reading for this one, and we're going to be giving away the first giveaway copy of Super Sick, Making Peace with Chronic Illness. So I'm pretty excited. You could be the first, but you got to share the stream. So you may notice that it's not just Allie. We've got a couple of others here with us today, which we're very excited about. I want to introduce you to them, and we're going to start with Lindsay. Now, Lindsay and Sharon, by the way, both make appearances in the book, so we'll start. Lindsay Blackburn lives in Billings, Montana. She works full-time in ministry and enjoys reading, writing book reviews, hiking, and spending time with her family and friends when we're not under stay-at-home orders, that is. Lindsay was diagnosed with fibromyalgia 4 years ago, and she's a big fan of Allie's book, Super Sick. Lindsay, thank you for joining us tonight. I do have a quick question for you to help get to know you better. Okay?
Sure.
Is it pirates or ninjas?
Ooh.
And you do have to justify your response, and there might be judgment in the chat.
I can do that.
Okay.
I would say ninjas.
Okay.
Just because it's a little bit related to my favorite TV show, Alias.
Oh, okay.
That's some pretty awesome moves.
I can see where you're going with that. That works. Okay, next up, Sharon. Sharon Blady is passionate about using her lived experience as a mental health, Sharon Blady, founder of Speak Up and Mental Health Advocates, comic book geek, and academic, who also spent some time as Manitoba's Minister of Health. That's a province in Canada, for those of you that are watching from the States and beyond. Now a mental health advocate, empowering others with creation of Embrace Your Superpower and Bulletproof to Stigma, two couple of projects that we love. Sharon is passionate about using her lived experience as a mental health diagnosis as part of her vision for helping others better understand and achieve improved mental health and well-being. Her mental health and neurodiversity diagnoses became a source of strength, or superpowers, as she would call them, which she has harnessed and directed for personal, familial, and organizational growth. Here's the cool part. Her life experiences range from being a single mom on social assistance to responsibility for a $6 billion health department budget. Sharon is a survivor of domestic violence, cancer, and suicide, along with being a published author, entrepreneur, and speaker. Sharon, thank you for taking the time out tonight to join with us. My question for you, Sharon, to get to know you better is tabletop role-playing games or live-action role-playing games?
Ooh, you know what? I'm gonna have to say tabletop role-playing game because I've just got back into a new batch of D&D, so I'm kind of, living in that right now. I'm playing a rather crotchety little goblin, a goblin me.
Nice. You're speaking my love language, which is goblin. That is my favorite D&D race. So we're good with this. And last but not least, we have the author of Super Sick, Allison Alexander. Allison Alexander is an earth-bending Ravenclaw from Hoth, who's more comfortable curling up at home with a video game than venturing out into the wild. As an author, editor, and blogger, Allison aims to make spaces for minority characters in science fiction, fantasy, and pop culture. Also, her favorite character class in D&D is a bard, so that should tell you everything you need to know about her. From her home in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, which she shares with her husband, Jordan, Allison writes books, edits novels, and mentors aspiring authors, which is awesome. So welcome here, Allie. My question for you will come a little bit later. I got a few more questions, so I'm going to switch. Okay. I'm going to switch our screen. I'm going to say we're going to put a pause on Sharon and Lindsay. We're going to come back to them in just a little bit, and it's just going to be you and me, Allie. You're in the hot seat at this point.
Oh
now.
No! I can do this.
Okay, before we get to the fun questions, I got some get to know you type things. For those of us that are friends and family of yours, we're probably aware of your diagnoses, of what you would call your chronic illness. But for those that aren't, let's just start there. Tell us a little bit about your chronic illness. What is it? And when were you formally diagnosed with it?
I have irritable bowel syndrome, also known as IBS, also known as doctors don't know what it is, and that's just what they call it. because you basically get diagnosed when everything else it might be is ruled out.
Okay.
So, and I have a series of other complications that are also undiagnosed. So that's in process. I have like chronic nausea and some other fun issues. But IBS I've had since I was a kid, like as far as I can remember. I think I didn't officially get diagnosed until I was in my until I was 20, I think. But I kind of always knew that's what it was. I just never like had a doctor be like, yep, this is it. But when I was 20, they were like, yep, this is it. So
well, one of the challenges with chronic illness that people might not understand is that you do get to miss out on opportunities for that. And somebody might hear this term IBS and think, oh, well, that's not really that big of a deal. Maybe it's a once in a while kind of thing. Has it ever been to a point where you've missed an opportunity that you longed for, even maybe some that still bother you today? What were those things and what happened?
This happens all the time, actually. You never know when. I mean, IBS does have different severities, so some people might have it and get kind of stomach cramps now and then, and other people are like totally waylaid by it when it happens. So I'm the worst on the scale kind. Mm-hmm. So I've definitely had lots of events that an attack will come or I won't be feeling well, and I'll be like, I can't go to this. One of the more recent ones was my husband and I had planned a snowboarding trip, and I really love snowboarding, and I've been doing it a couple times a winter for years. And the past couple of years, I just haven't been able to go. I've just been too sick. I think when I was younger, I think I could like push past being sick sometimes. And now that I'm getting older, I just can't do it anymore. Either that or it's getting worse, or I just can't do it. So that's been a little sad for me, because snowboarding was like my one claim to this is a physical activity that I actually like doing. For those of you who know me, I'm not sportsy or anything really. So that was a little sad for me, because I really do enjoy that, and I just haven't been able to do it in the past couple of years.
Well, getting back to the book, Super Sick, what inspired you to write this book? What was your impetus for wanting to get these stories that you share out, both of yours and those that you interview, but also relating it to pop culture? What was the inspiration?
So writing is a really cathartic experience for me. I figured that out because I've been writing for online publications for years, often on topics of pop culture, because I'm a huge geek and that's what I like to talk about. And I just realized that when I write, I often like teaching myself and learning things as I'm writing, and like, oh, this is how I like work through this emotional thing that I'm going through. And so I was like, but I don't write a journal or anything like that. Like if I'm writing, it has to be for something. I can't just like sit down and be like, I'm gonna journal my emotions right now and figure this out. It's like, no, I need to like actually have a reason. So that's partly why I started writing this book, because I was like, I want to work through these things and these like traumas I've experienced and all these emotions from chronic illness. So it's partly a selfish reason that I wanted to write this for myself. And then also I know that a lot of people with chronic illness feel really alone and isolated. And so one of the reasons I wanted to write a book was to show them that they're not, that there are other people who are having these problems. And then, of course, the pop culture slant is just because I'm incredibly nerdy and I connect with fiction and fictional stories. And I also think it's really important the way chronic illnesses are portrayed in fiction. And I wanted to comment on it because I haven't seen that commented on a lot. And I thought that was important.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know when you were in the journey of this book, we talked a lot about like what are some of the other books like this out there, and it was very slim pickings of discussions about chronic illness just aren't there. There's a lot of like individual, there's this, but this whole concept of chronic illness. So what were some of the challenges that you encountered along the way to complete the book?
Some of the topics were really difficult for me to put onto the page. One in particular was, there's a chapter on suicide, And I was like, this is such a difficult topic. I've never struggled with this myself, and I don't feel equipped to like talk about it. So I ended up interviewing a lot of different people and getting other people who have experience to weigh in. And I just hope that I did the topic justice, because that was a real tough one.
Well, last question then for you. Now, this one is going to seem obvious, but I want to highlight that you are married now and your husband may pick a different answer. And I know that he is watching the stream. So you may want to adjust or be careful in how you justify your choice between video games or board games.
Oh, dear. Why not both? Why are you making me talk about this? I have to pick video games. That's been the love of my life since I was like 6. So.
Okay. All right. Well, Allie, I'll let you grab your book. We're going to do a little bit of a reading. Before you start, though, could you give us a bit of context of the excerpt that you're going to be reading? Just kind of set it up for us. I'll turn it over to you, so it'll just going to be you on screen.
Is the book. Yay. It's just me. Oh dear. Okay.
Just you now. It's just you.
All right. The chapter that I'm reading from is chapter 10. So I'm not starting you at the beginning. You got to buy the book if you want to go there. And this whole chapter is all about anxiety. So anxiety to do with being sick, the fear that happens when you're sick. That's your intro. So I'm gonna just dive right in. I'm afraid of pain and that it might never go away. I'm afraid of being a burden. I'm afraid doctors won't listen to me and will instead discredit my experiences. I'm afraid of tests and side effects. I'm afraid friends will get tired of me. I'm afraid my husband will acclimatize to my illness and become less sympathetic over time. I'm afraid to leave the house. I'm afraid that during a simple chore like grocery shopping, I'll have to sit down in the middle of the aisle due to a wave of nausea and people will stare. Yes, this has happened to me. Amanda Brotzman, a character from Hulu's Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, spent years as a shut-in prior to the beginning of the series. Amanda has pararibulitis, a fictional disease where she experiences hallucinations that feel real. As her brother Todd describes, water on your hand could feel like fire. Your shoe on your foot could feel like it was crushing it. Breathing could feel like drowning. Yikes. When Todd visits her in episode 1, Horizons, the two of them jam together, Amanda on the drums and Todd on the guitar. But in the middle of rocking out, Amanda suddenly perceives one of her drumsticks as a knife slicing into her hand. She jumps up, screaming from the pain as Todd tries to calm her. Amanda rarely leaves the house due to anxiety. However, when Dirk Gently learns of her illness, he asks her why she never goes out. If the disease is in you, why does it matter where you go? He asks her. These are innocent words from someone who has never experienced the kind of anxiety Amanda has. I would probably have been offended and tried to explain what it was like living with an illness, but Amanda just looks at him in surprise as if she's never thought of it that way. It is no doubt these words that inspire her to make a trip to the grocery store all by herself in episode 3. It's just a short scene, a moment you might miss if you are unfamiliar with the fear chronic illness can inspire. Amanda walks down a grocery store aisle with a shopping basket in her hand, struggling to breathe through the anxiety. As she picks up a cheese sample and tastes it, her expression slowly shifts from panic to delight. I suspect she is thinking something like, I'm out of the house. I'm not having an attack. I'm okay. I can do this. She slams the basket down on the checkout counter in victory and tells the confused cashier, I made it. She is so proud of herself, delighted with the freedom of doing something on her own. And then her hand is engulfed in fire, flames only she can see and feel. She struggles to open her pill bottle and spills her medication onto the floor, screaming. She races into the parking lot and collapses, feeling fire engulf her body and burn her as two guys laugh at her and record the whole thing with their phones. Her anxiety seeps into me as I watch this scene, and I feel her relief as the Rowdy Three, a strange group of characters with mystical abilities, race to her rescue, chase off the gogglers, and magically feed off of her anxiety, which gives her a reprieve from the pain. The desire for self-sufficiency. Most North Americans expect self-sufficiency. The whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps thing is like a religion. Adults who live with their parents, or who can't change a flat tire, or who've never done their own taxes are the butts of jokes. People who can't seem to keep a job are frowned upon. What's wrong with them, we ask? Even though there is often nothing wrong with them, stuff just happens and it's beyond people's control. I know exactly what's wrong with me. Because I'm super sick, I can't always do things for myself. But I want to so badly. I hate asking other people to do things for me. I want to be perceived as strong and self-reliant and gets things done. I want to be able to go to the grocery store, the library, the drugstore, the bank, get a haircut, get work done, make supper, and visit friends, all in one day. But often all I can manage is one of those things. And my husband, family member, or friend helps with the rest, or the rest waits for another day. One morning I woke up early with an attack of cramps, and I proceeded to the bathroom with a book to hopefully distract me from the pain. However, the pain increased at an exponential level, and I called my husband Jordan from the bedroom to come stand beside me so I could lean on him. In addition to the volcano erupting in my gut, I felt woozy and nauseated, but I couldn't leave the toilet because my bowels threatened to let loose at any moment. I was covered in sweat, and even uttering a single word took massive effort. My vision darkened, the pain exploded, and I felt like I was dying. I would cease to exist if it increased anymore. The next thing I remember, I was awakening to Jordan holding me up. My book was on the floor, the pages crumpled. I had passed out. I was delirious and confused at first, like waking up from a nightmare. The pain gradually eased up from there, and I was able to retreat to the bed. Then I began shaking and shivering, even under the blanket and with Jordan's body heat next to me. I don't know if this intense cold is my body overcompensating after overheating, or if it's because I'm in shock after the intense pain, but it always happens after a severe attack. I'm almost always anxious about leaving the house, but after attacks like this, that anxiety is increased 100-fold. It's scary not knowing when you will be in intense pain, or when you are in the midst of it, not knowing how long it will last. You can get post-traumatic stress and anxiety from the intense experiences of pain itself, and from the fear those memories of pain incur. A week after this episode, I would get panic attacks simply from leaving the house, even in the company of my husband. After about a week being confined to our little condo, I realized my anxiety about leaving might not get better until I left. So I went out with my husband for an hour. I panicked, but I survived. After experiences like these, it's important to celebrate small victories. This was victory number 1. A few days later, I decided to go grocery shopping on my own. I didn't feel brave enough, but I did it anyway. I felt like Amanda walking down the aisles, worried I would experience an attack of pain, nausea, or anxiety at any moment. I felt a twinge in my stomach, and anxiety shot through me, flooding my system with panic. I stopped, leaning against the cart, and breathed. In, out, in, out. Suddenly, I was submersed in an ocean of nausea. Great. In, out. One step forward and then the next. I finished grabbing the items from my list and made it to the checkout. I got to the car with my groceries. I made it home. Victory number 2. A week after that, I was able to drive to a music rehearsal without feeling any anxiety at all. Victory number 3. Managing my anxiety is a balancing act. I have to decide every day what my limits are, when to push myself, and when to give myself a break. There's a concept called pain anxiety, says Dr. Jason Ediger, a psychologist in Winnipeg, Manitoba. The more afraid we are of our pain, the more we experience subjective pain, and the more disruptive that pain is to our lives. Jason recommends pacing techniques, acceptance therapy, and mindfulness-based approaches as viable ways to cope long-term with unsolvable and unpredictable pain. Pacing techniques are about finding the middle road between using up too much energy and avoiding life altogether. Acceptance and mindfulness are about acknowledging the reality of pain and our inability to control it. I've had some patients who got good results greeting the pain that would show up in random attacks. He says, for example, "Hey, there you are. Where have you been all morning?" Then moving back to the task at hand. My anxiety hasn't disappeared. I haven't conquered it, which is an unrealistic goal anyway. I'm learning to manage it, and that's enough. I don't always decide to be brave. Sometimes the anxiety and stress on my body is just not worth it, and I make the decision to stay home. Choosing to stay home and miss an event, meeting, appointment, or outing is not losing the battle. It's managing a condition. And sometimes this is the braver decision of the two. I've learned to give myself compassion and grace. I have a fight it and conquer it mentality, and I feel guilty when my condition persists. All my favorite stories from pop culture are about battling and defeating evil, and sickness sure seems evil to me. I've been especially angry at myself for not being able to conquer the mental health issues that spiral out of control due to illness. Depression and anxiety, those are all in my head. They're not real issues like a broken limb or a paralyzed body, so I should be able to fix them if I just concentrate hard enough, right? Since Albus Dumbledore is a paragon of wisdom, it stands to reason he'd have a quote fit the situation, and he does. Of course it is happening inside your head, Harry, but why on earth should that mean it is not real? That is not the end of that chapter, but it is the end of my reading. So thank you for listening.
Well done. Yay. We can get a bit of a, because there's only the four of us, so we could cheer and say yay, well done. You could take a bit of a breather, Allie. We got some announcements. So
okay.
That was really good, Ellie. That actually seemed really hard. So thank you for reading that, for writing that. I'm excited to read more. I've read a lot of the book, but there are changes that I've missed, and I think it's worth another read. So I appreciate that. Those of you that do want to read more, you can get the book. It is available today. It has launched today. We do have some links. They kind of go in the rotation. You'll see it off to my side here of where you can get it and how you can acquire it yourself. We have it in hardcover, paperback, and in ebook as well. And so, yeah, who knows how long printing is going to take, but we know that ebook is instant. So if you want to go that route, that is always an option. I've got Emma here with us. So Emma has done a raffle. So all the people that have shared and all the rest, we've got a whole bunch of people in the chat. The winner is actually Julia Ham. So congratulations to Julia Ham for winning the first copy, which is awesome. And yeah, what we're going to do is, Julia, we're going to get your details. Emma's going to message you and figure all of that out. We'll need you to send us your email so that we can connect with you and how best to get the copy of the book, whether it be paperback or ebook, whichever one you would prefer, and we'll get that to you. But we'll set that aside. We have more giveaways, but first we got to play a little game of Actually. For those that have never seen this or heard of this game before, I got to give credit to Emma, our publicist. She was the one that came up with this idea because she loves seeing the show on College Humor. It kind of plays into nerdy and geeky culture, which is us. And in that, sometimes we get into, I would say, like intellectual fits. So if somebody says something about something that we love and it is slightly off, we will respond with, actually, and we will correct them. And so we thought we would take this idea of nerd and geek culture and correction and all the rest and turn that into this idea of chronic illness. And so I've got several statements here that I am going to embody, and I'm going to let these three wonderful women correct me. Thanks. Really wanted another guy on this stream, but it's okay.
Deal with it.
I will deal with it. All right. Lindsay, I'm gonna come over to you here first. Okay. These are situations. Okay, so I want to also state first for the stream, I'm gonna get into character, so please don't attribute this to me.
This is not really what Kyle thinks.
I helped write these. I didn't feel these. Okay. All right. Here we go. Okay, so Lindsay, I'm picturing a scene or a situation where I'm heading off now. Social distancing is long gone. I'm excited to get to my local Walmart or large box store that I need to get something that I want to go, and it is just packed. There is no parking spot nearby. I've driven, there are a couple, but those are special parking spots, and so I park, and I feel like I have to walk nearly a mile just to get inside Walmart for the milk that I desperately need. And as I'm walking up, I see somebody get out of their car. They pull into the wheelchair spot, and they get out of the car, and they walk into Walmart. And I'm seething because if they're in the wheelchair spot, they may have that tag, but they need to be in a wheelchair.
Actually, the use of a handicap parking spot is not synonymous with the use of a wheelchair. So that would be my short answer. And honestly, I think a lot of times when people have this misconception, it's just because they don't know that there are plenty of people with other disabilities or chronic health conditions or pain conditions, or even something like a temporary injury that they've had surgery for and treatment for and stuff, that need the use of a handicap parking spot. So I think the best way when I come across that is just to educate people and to let them know that there's lots of valid reasons for the use of that. I don't know about in Canada, but here in the US, the sign has a wheelchair on it for handicap parking. So sometimes people make that misconception. But to get that permit, you need to have a license from the state that is signed off by a physician or some medical professional. So the people that have those need them. And I think part of that is just invisible illness is difficult for some people to understand, or they don't have proximity to people that have those conditions. It's something that I can understand why they would think that, but it is incorrect thinking.
Allie or Sharon, you guys want to add to that at all?
Well, I like your point about the invisible aspect of it, because so many chronic illnesses and mental health issues are invisible, and it's an unfortunate misunderstanding in terms of, yes, we've used a wheelchair, but people have to get beyond that and just be open to the idea and get over the judgment too. Frankly, I kind of wish that I could walk across the parking lot, but like that's the other part, is the recognition that we don't necessarily want to be there.
Reasons to have mobility issues, so
we don't consider it a privilege.
Well, one, like as a personal experience, I remember when my mother had cancer and she was going through these super intense chemotherapy treatments, she was given the handicap pass. Not because she needed it necessarily for mobility, but because in Winnipeg, we are like minus a bajillion degrees in winter. Yes. That cold weather was super detrimental to her health, and she was very sensitive to it. And so she needed to be able to get into the stores quickly as a result of that. And it had little to do with her mobility and everything to do with her health. And that was a big wake up moment for me. I can freely admit that.
And proximity matters. And so I think once we know better, we do better. By and large, I want to give people the benefit of the doubt of that. Once they know, then that won't be an issue and they'll be completely understanding.
All right, Sharon, I want you to put your maybe your Minister of Health hat on here. I've got one for you. The former Minister of Health in Manitoba here. Okay, so I go in my place of work. I go frequently and I do enjoy my job, and I've got a certain number of sick days, and I don't always take my sick days because it's important that I get this work done. But I got this colleague of mine that seems to be taking a lot of sick days, way more sick days than I ever take, and yet, they're treated equally as mine, and that just does not seem fair that they take more sick days than I do.
Well, actually, what's really unfair is that they have to take more sick days. What's really unfair to them is they would probably like to be at work just as much as you are. And that's interesting because a lot of the work that I had done related to things like legislation and the idea of, again, sick days. And I always had a problem with the counting of sick days. I understand it from an HR perspective. But honestly, for those of us, especially as somebody that has a number of mental health diagnoses, when people sit there and they talk about sick days, they act like they're vacations. Like, I'm not sure what you're doing on your day off if you're taking a sick day, but I can tell you, I am not sitting around watching Oprah eating bonbons. Okay. If I'm taking a sick day, I may be curled up in pain under a blanket. I might not be able to function. So these extra days off that you're talking about, oh my God, my butt would much rather be parked in my desk. So it is, yes, it is unfortunate that other folks do take more time, but it's not unfortunate in the way that you think it is. So
I remember having to take more and more sick days as I worked at a regular 9-to-5 job. And at one point my boss took me out for coffee. Kind of, he made it sound like it was to check in how I was doing, but it was more like, these days you're taking aren't okay. You need to be in the office. And it's like, I don't have control over it. And what was really frustrating was it was a job that I could work from home. So often when I did take a sick day, I often did my work at home. I don't think people realize that, like, getting up, getting dressed, making yourself eat something, getting in your car or bus or whatever to get to the office is like a big deal for people with chronic illnesses. It's a lot of work. So like sometimes I can do work, but I only can do it from home. But that was a problem because there's just this mentality that you have to be in the office. You have to be in the office. And one of the things that I'm really hoping comes out of COVID-19 is that more employers are going to be okay and realize that this is an actual alternative that can work, and that more disabled people will be allowed to work from home after this. Fingers crossed.
Oh, I hope so too. But I can tell you, I recently got into an online debate with another person that does mental health work in HR, and he was touting his program that he was going to talk, it's when employees are looked after and they have a good mental health program, they're more dedicated, there's more this, more that, and a zero sick day policy. And I was just like, oh my God.
Wow.
It's like, you know what, you can have the warmest, fuzziest mental health supports, this and that, but as soon as you say 0 sick days, especially as he was tying it to mental health, and what he had done was he had confused and conflated the notion of people taking sick days because of a toxic work environment, and that somehow if you're working in a mentally healthy environment, there's going to be no mental health issues. And I was like, dude, sorry. The stuff that triggers my brain chemistry is not all tied to work. Yes, there's other stuff, and now what you've basically done is you've told me, as somebody with a pre-existing mental health condition, that I don't really count, or that your mental health program is to help other people from becoming like me. And then we had this little debate, and he backpedaled. He said, oh, well, I wasn't talking about people, with pre-existing conditions. And I'm like, dude, if you're talking mental health in the workplease, you start with us. Yeah. We are not like, wrong answer.
Well,
when Ellen was talking about needing to take time off from her job and stuff, it reminded me of the spoon theory. I don't know if the people watching are familiar with that. I don't know if you want me to go into that a little bit, but I can explain that. Well,
incidentally, like I know that the person who developed that, I believe, commented on the book and stuff too. And yeah,
no, not but that one. I do explain spoon theory.
Yeah, that's what it was, right?
But feel free to give
go for it, Lindsay.
Summary, Lindsay.
The short version of it is that we all have a certain amount of spoons a day, let's just say. And so someone who is healthy and able-bodied might use it for things like work, or just, the everyday going on and on, getting your chores done, errands done, that kind of thing. And they don't ever use up their full spoons. They have excess energy or excess ability. But someone who has a chronic health condition, disease, mental health illness, things like that, can use spoons before they even get out the door. They might need one to just get out of bed. They might need one for a shower, one to make breakfast. Things that we who are able-bodied might have, we do kind of mindlessly or whatever, just part of our day, but it takes a lot of extra energy for those who are sick. I think that's the basis.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll continue on, and this one I think is really important for all you women to understand, is that when, like, I don't understand, like, you go to the doctor's office and I don't say there's anything, and it's clear, like, when I go to the doctor's office as a man, I get my diagnosis and things are treated. I'm pretty sure, like, they have things in place where men and women should be treated the same in doctors' offices. So whatever they say is fine with me.
Actually, Kyle, just straighten up here. There is actually a gender bias that has been recorded. There are studies done on it in the hospital about men and women being treated differently. And I have actually, I read all these studies and everything, and I was like, oh, that's terrible. This sucks. That makes so much sense. And then I actually experienced it firsthand. My husband, Jordan, and I went to emergency on 2 separate visits within a couple weeks of each other. And we had very similar symptoms. He had a kidney stone, which is terrible, terrible pain. And I had this awful UTI. So we were both like white ghosts, like sweating and shaking and shivering and in incredible amounts of pain. When he went in, the nurse right away offered him a T3, which is a more effective pain reliever. When I went in, all they would give me was an Advil. I was like, this is very strange. And then I ended up waiting, I think it was about 10 hours in this incredible, incredible pain. And his wait was much shorter. And I don't, like, I'm glad that he got in soon. But this gender bias exists where if you're a woman and you're in pain and you show it, the doctor thinks you're just being emotional. And if you don't show it, if you're more stoic, the doctor thinks, well, you're not in that much pain because you're not showing it. If a man is in a lot of pain and is emotional, well, it must be really bad because this man is emotional. And if a man says he's in a lot of pain but isn't showing it, oh, he's just being like a stoic man, like he must be in a lot of pain because he says he is. So it's incredibly unfair, and just this terrible thing that happens. And I'm sure lots of people, it's not like these nurses are doing it on purpose, or these doctors. It's socially ingrained in them to think this way.
Well, that leads us into our next one, and Sharon, you'll be able to answer this one, I'm sure, because the truth is, like, I get it. You say that you're having a bad day. Maybe there's some things going on. You've taken your sick days, but I'm pretty sure it's just all in your head. Have you ever considered that as a possibility?
Well, actually, you know what? As somebody with a bunch of mental health and neurodiversity diagnoses, it is. Would you like to talk about my amygdala right now?
No, I'm good.
And especially it is in my head, and I love the fact that you quote Dumbledore, because exactly, just because it's in my head doesn't make it any less real. And I love the fact that we're now talking neuroscience and neuroplasticity and all of these other things, because just because something is in your head doesn't make it any less real. And having survived both cancer and suicide, I can tell you, I got a heck of a lot more sympathy as the, oh my God, poor dear, this and that, whatever. And my cancer wasn't an inconvenience to anyone. But what's interesting about it was my cancer was something that they were able to locate, isolate, cut out of me, some other treatments, boom, 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 I'm all good. Nobody can fix my anxiety, my bipolar 2, like there's no magic wand or magic treatment that's going to, again, isolate it the same way that cancer's cluster was taken out. So just, it is in my head, and boy, somebody cracks that nut open, they are going to get an entire little lecture on the brain structure and brain chemicals.
Yeah, well, sure. It's, that makes a lot of sense. Fine. But I do want to say that if you have a chronic illness like fibromyalgia, for instance, dating is pretty much the same as it is for healthy people. Like there's
well, actually, dating is hard in general, but it's there's a little extra layer there for someone with a chronic health condition. No, that is true. And sometimes the energy you need to even get on an app is just not there. So dating is interesting. Let's put it that way. I've definitely had good experiences with dates who understood to an extent, or at least were sympathetic and took my concerns and cares in mind. But it is hard when you feel exhausted, sometimes when you're dealing with chronic pain and don't feel like having a phone call or going out for dinner or whatever. Yeah, dating is just hard.
I got a follow-up question. Which date is which numbered date is the one that you tell them about your chronic illness?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think sometimes it's hard to discern when to reveal certain things about your medical health that's personal, because it doesn't necessarily need to come up on a first or second date. Sometimes you're just talking about work or your family or your friends or things you like to do. But at the same time, you don't want to feel like you're going to withhold information from someone that you're considering dating, or you don't want them to feel like you're not being honest or something like that. So it is kind of a hard thing to discern. And I think it's different for every couple and it's different for every person. It's always a thing to think about. The last time I was dating someone, I brought it fairly early on and it was fine. But the truth is you don't want to date someone who's not okay with the whole sum total of who you are anyways. And so if they weren't okay with that, then they're not going to be okay with me in general.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've talked a little bit about social media tonight and the interactions. And I know, Sharon, you had mentioned, you were just in a social media argument or conversation. And this is one of those things, like, Allie, I know sometimes you are really candid with your diagnoses, how you're feeling, and that'll go out onto Facebook. And I see a lot of advice that comes on there, like, you just need more kale. I've seen vitamins. Did you get enough sleep last night? Exercise. There are some supplements, link, that you should try because these will solve your problem. So my question is, doesn't it make sense to just try all those? Because clearly you haven't.
Well, actually, Kyle, I have tried a lot of things. I am in the process of trying a lot of things. I have a giant list of things from my doctor that I will be trying. I think this one often comes out of love and concern, that people just want to make it better. And so they immediately go to problem solving mode. What can make it better? Well, I heard about this. Maybe this could help you. Maybe this could help you. For some people, it is like, oh, well, if you haven't tried this, or if you say no to trying this, you're not trying hard enough. Like, you almost like you deserve to be sick. And for other people, it's just like, they're just trying to help. Like they just, or even like, oh, this helped me. Maybe this might help you. And I don't mind that coming from people I have really close relationships who probably know already a lot of the things I've tried and a lot of the stuff I'm going through. But it's often coming from random people, like strangers, either random people you meet and just happen to find out that you have a chronic illness, or social media or whatever. Oh, well, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Maybe this. And it can just feel really exhausting because when you have a chronic illness, you already have this giant list of things that you're trying to work through and dealing with symptoms, and you don't need that added guilt on your plate. Like, oh, I need to try this now,
Well, is there anybody else that wants to comment on that?
I'll say that there was a recent podcast episode with Brene Brown talking about comparative suffering. And I think one of the things that gets frustrating when you have a chronic condition is that there's a whole lot of well, at least you don't have, or things like that. And someone else's pain or the experience they're going through that's difficult doesn't negate what I'm going through just because there's this worse, or, it's just, there's no reason to compare.
There's enough suffering for all of us.
Yes, exactly. Well, and going to Allison's point about the idea of stuff being well-meaning, a lot of things, and this again goes to the social media and the fact that we can share information. So now a study comes out of somewhere, and then journalists, media get their hands on it, and they distill it down to vitamin blah 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 does X. But what they failed to do is actually read the research itself in detail. And what you find out is that this group of scientists working with mice, said that possibly a deficiency in the blah, blah, blah vitamin, might lead. And so it's one of these things where it's like, it's not a unicausal thing. There's not a magic wand. This is like one thing. So again, with mental health, we often, it's our diet or exercise. And you're like, how am I supposed to get out for a jog when which on one level, yes, I know it's going to do this and that for endorphins, but in terms of my spoon count, getting my butt out of bed and possibly putting any kind of food in my mouth is a thing. And no, I don't have time to get the melon baller out, get 3 different kinds of melons based on whatever vitamin. Sorry, you shipping Jamie Oliver to my house too? So it's these things where they're part of a larger package. And I think sometimes when people suggest things, it comes from this this is the new magic bullet, and you watch it within a lot of nutritional supplements where based on one study, now it's we sell the package of blah blah blah, and if you just take this, and you're like, again, if only.
Yeah. Well, we've got another giveaway to give away before we to start. Before we do that, though, I want to remind everybody that you can purchase your copy. It is available now online. You can see all the links and everything. And Emma's been spamming the chat, and I've seen a lot of great interaction reading some of those stories and stuff. We are going to do a bit of a general Q&A. So if you do have your questions, anything for the 3 of these wonderful women, or for me, I don't know what expertise I have other than to moderate a conversation, but please, by all means, ask them. Everybody who asks a question is going to be entered into our next draw for a book. So it's kind of an impetus for you to ask a question. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Even if it's just a comment, we'd love to hear that as well, too. Before we take one of those questions, I've got one question for you guys. Since we've talked about a lot of these statements, are there any that I missed? Are there any actually sort of-ish statements that really, really get your gears going that perhaps we didn't address today?
You can't be in that much pain because you smiled or you look like you're having fun is a big one. Yeah. I think people don't understand what chronic pain means. It doesn't mean I've lived with this for years. I've been managing this for years. Sometimes I am in pain and I can still crack a smile at a joke or something. It doesn't make my chronic illness gone or less than. I've also had, you're you said you couldn't come to this thing, but you're at home playing a video game. It's well, yeah, I can. It's a really good distraction from pain sometimes, that's one I've heard before.
Any others from the 2 of you before I get to these questions that we got coming in from our audience today?
Well, I think from a mental health perspective, and I think see it with chronic illness, other chronic illness as well, but again, because of that hidden aspect for a lot of mental health, or that people have this very, I hate to say it, but it borders on a demonized perspective of what it's like when somebody's in mental health crisis is but you're successful. And there's this kind of exceptionalism. So if somebody's attained something, while living with chronic illness, then they're kind of put on this little pedestal. And that's, again, it's really uncomfortable. It's the, you're strong or you're different. And in some respects, you're both denied your right to suffer, right to feel the pain that you feel. And at the same time, you're held up in this weird way that I think is unfair for others. I mean, for my mental health situation, the conditions that I have weren't diagnosed until they became problems. But in looking back, they were all part of my life. And I always say the difference is that I was able to achieve something because I lived with spidey senses, which you can hide. Peter Parker can hide his spidey senses in a way that the Hulk can't. And other people are getting judged because their superpowers hulked out on them sooner. And now they're seen by their condition first. And we don't give them that opportunity to, and so I think that's the other problem is that when you put a few people on pedestals as exceptional in what they've accomplished with a chronic illness, then you're not doing a disservice to their pain. And then you're also setting other folks up to fail.
There have been some comments, I'm scrolling through some of the comments of our live stream here, and this one's from Zachary. Quitting a job due to severe mental illness was one of the hardest things I ever did. Entirely because of the shame and conception of what is my pain when all when there is all this other pain. I should just deal with this. I see one here from Sarah saying, being a stay-at-home mom must be great. And she's exhausted just hearing that.
Yes.
Another, I once tried a supplement. It made me more sick. Turned out it was damaging me. I have to run every supplement past my doctors. Yes, multiple doctors.
Yeah, I think some people don't realize that, like, my body reacts to everything. Like, if I ever try something new, I'm trying like maybe a quarter of a dose just to check, like it's so. If something works, like if a vitamin works for someone, it might cause havoc in my system. You never know, right?
Well, it looks like Emma has changed the comics because there's been a lot of really great comments going in addition to questions. I'll give you a question in just a second, but she's saying that even if you just comment, she's going to enter you in for the giveaway just because there's been a lot of rawness that has been shared, and we wanted to honor that. And so I thought, Emma, that was a really good addendum to the contest entry. This question's coming from Sam Webster. Instead of the frustrating things that people say, what is that you want to really hear from us that is positive?
That's such a Sam question. I love you, Sam. Sometimes all I need is for someone to say that they don't know what to say, like, or I'm okay with silence too. Sometimes there just isn't anything to say, and like just knowing that you're there and you love me is all that I need. I don't know, what about you ladies?
I really like, I'm here for you. I care, things like that. I work, like I said, in ministry. So there's a lot of people who want to assign some sort of religious meaning to what I'm going through or make, comments that are difficult here, when all you really need is to be listened to. I like to know from my closest friends and family that they're listening, they care, they're there, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think for me, a lot of it is sometimes we just need somebody to listen, and that and the habit that we have in our family now is if somebody says that they need to talk, or you sense that somebody wants to talk, the immediate follow-up with that idea of instigating a conversation is, do you need me to just sit here and listen, or do you want me to help problem solve? Because a lot of times when we do talk to folks or we ask somebody, they think that they have to put their problem solving hat on. And then that's when you get the interruptions actually with what about this? And it's like, you know what, right now, I just need to verbally process this. If I make it to problem solving, great. But right now, just kind of let me barf it out, because that's what I need to do right now to process what I'm going through.
And another great phrase is tell me more. So I got that from Kelly Corrigan. She writes some essays and stuff that are very helpful. But anyways, I like that one because if someone doesn't really understand, a great way to get a dialogue going and to actually hear what I'm going through is tell me more.
This question is coming from Julie. She says, I'm not sure if this is exactly a question or not, but what qualifies? I have sinus allergies that last all year, depression and general fatigue. And I still work full-time, retail and food service, live by myself, etc. It's invisible. And this discussion on it, it's not the worst. So I'll have you guys to comment on that. What qualifies?
What qualifies as a chronic illness?
Yeah, I think that's the question there.
I think anything that is causing you discomfort and suffering on the long term is a chronic illness. It doesn't have to be worse than person A. It doesn't have to be, there's no, we're not like a secret club that only invites
and it's not members. The Olympics. It's not a competitive sport.
Yeah.
I do know, because Allie, you've mentioned this a lot to me too, even that diagnosis of IBS, this is kind of like the general catch-all. Sure, it has a name, and sometimes chronic illnesses don't have a name. They just don't know what's wrong. It doesn't mean it's any less valid if there is no name attached to it.
Yeah, there is something, sometimes people seem to not believe you unless you've gone to a doctor and have this title to put to it. And I think there is something about, like, in your own head, hearing a doctor tell you that your thing is real also is a comfort, sort of, even though it shouldn't be. Like, your suffering is valid regardless of what name is or isn't on it.
This is a really hard one. and I don't even know if we can completely answer this, but I'd love to hear what you guys input you may give. How do you keep, this one's from Robert, how do you keep your illness from defining you?
Well, Robert, I wrote a whole book on that.
Read Allie's book.
It's a struggle. I'm not sure how to answer that in a short time. What do you ladies think?
I think for some people it does define them more than others, and it's a neutral thing. You know, sometimes identifying with it is positive. You know, I know people, for instance, I have a friend who's an advocate for disability awareness and disabled causes and stuff. And to her, it's a very powerful thing. I don't feel like my conditions, I have more than fibromyalgia, but that's my main one. I don't feel like they define me. It does impact my life a lot, but it doesn't really define me. But I don't think defining you is necessarily a bad thing either.
Yeah, I think my illness is a part of me. So it's not like, oh, I'm this separate person and this is my illness over here. Like, it is part of who I am, but I am more than just my illness. And actually, speaking of which, that's what this jewelry I'm wearing that we're going to give away later. It's in the shape of a plus, just to signify that you are more than your illness.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a spice in the pot is how I look at it. And there's a whole bunch of things that are tied into my identity, and that's just one of them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it might be a place where that spice is a little bit more emphasized, like clearly in the work that I do as a mental health advocate, I put that up front and center. But I can tell you that, you know, Minister of Health, when I was going to go public with my mental health experience, oh my God, you want to give your political staff a coronary? Say that you're going public with your mental health diagnosis. So that was that was like, stop playing in the spice rack, honey. Put that spice at the back. Go throw something else up. Let's talk about you being an academic who taught nurses. Don't talk about the, you know. Yeah. So I think it's a spice in the pot thing, and sometimes it's again part of a larger flavor palette.
Question from question from Shelley. She says this: How do those of you deal with people constantly wanting to fix you? Like you're not whole if you're sick, kind of thing.
Oh. With a lot of patience and sometimes a lot of ranting to my friends after people try to do.
Shelley, I hope you feel their grunts and groans, because I think this is something that all of them have been through, and that's clear. So you're not alone in that.
And I think it's something we tell ourselves a lot too. Oh, I'm broken. I'm not right. Go ahead, Sharon.
Well, I was just going to say, and that's where my reframing came in, because I lived with all of this, you know, at different points, and it actually took explaining mental health issues to my son when he was melting down, that I reframed them, and I said, you know, you're not broken. You're a mutant, and you have, you know, you're like an X-Man. You have mutant superpowers, and we're gonna figure out how to use them, because we were able to reframe them. And I think that's the other part of this, is that I don't see myself as broken. I see the way my brain is wired is it's neutral, and sometimes it absolutely sucks, and I wouldn't wish this on anybody. But what is it that I can manage? What is it that I can find? Like trying to find ways of reframing and negotiating so that it doesn't overwhelm me. But it is that idea that, yeah, like it's not easy. And honestly, it's day by day. So a lot of, you know, even what I thought of 5 months ago, I think it's an evolutionary process, and that, yeah, I'm not broken. So don't try to fix me. In fact, some of my greatest things have come from the physical. You know, cancer taught me a whack of stuff, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
I've got 2 more questions for y'all. We'll start with this one. This one's just for Allie. This one's coming from Naomi. What was the best part about writing the book for you? Other than being done.
Yeah, that's the best part. I think it was all the interviews that I did. Like I interviewed a lot of people. Some I knew already, and some were complete strangers to me that I got introduced from. Kyle introduced me to some people I just randomly met on social media and was like, can I talk to you about this topic? Lindsay was one of those. I've never met you in person, but we were in a different Facebook group, and it was just neat to see all the different perspectives, different illnesses that people had, and yet we all had these similar experiences. And some people had very different experiences than I did. And so I think it was really important for this not to just be my story, that it was many people's story, and it made me feel less isolated, and I hope it did for them as well.
Well, oh man, the good questions keep coming in, but we are running out of time here, and so I think I'm going to end on this question, and I'll give you each a chance to answer, because I think it ends on a great note here. What would you like? What would you like to say to us who are still on the diagnosis journey? So, Lindsay, I'll start with you. And then I'll work my way around up to Allie and let this end with a little message of hope. So what would you like to say to those that are still in the diagnosis journey?
I would say just to be patient, because especially with autoimmune conditions, it can take a long time to get diagnosed. So just to manage your symptoms as best as you can, see the necessary doctors, whether it's a rheumatologist or whoever you need to see, keep up on those appointments, and really work hard to take care of yourself. Because sometimes you are your best advocate. You know your body the best, and you know when you need to lay low, take care of yourself, rest, and when you have the capacity to do more. So just be patient, take the time. I hope that you would get a diagnosis soon, or at least some relief for your symptoms soon, because it can be very difficult in the waiting when they aren't figuring you out and you have a lot of pain or you're dealing with a lot of symptoms. So just hang in there. Know that there's a lot of people like those of us on this conversation that know what that's like to walk through, and to reach out to the people that you love and care for that will walk with you through it.
Okay, Sharon, same question to you. What would you say for those that are still on that diagnosis journey?
Well, that it is a journey, and to just be, again, as Lindsay said, recognize that you're the person that knows your body the best. You're going to find it helpful and maybe even validating when somebody finally gives you a label, a definition, because you at least maybe know what you're up against, or you've narrowed it down. But also know that those things evolve, and they evolve as we work with different medical folks, and as maybe somebody has an aha moment about a symptom, that whatever it is, and just recognize that, again, you're the expert, and don't get caught up on those different things. Just know that it can change. Because I had diagnoses basically coming from 25 clear up to 45. So I had a 20-year window of learning about, being officially told things about my brain that in some respects it's like, well, I've known that since I was 5, but thanks for putting this little sticker on me now. So I know me better than anybody. Work with the professionals to have them help do the best they can.
Allison, take it home. What would you say to those that are still in their diagnosis journey?
It's really hard. I'm still there myself for a lot of things. I'd say prepare yourself for a lot of people that are going to make you sad and mad by the things that they say. And then make best friends with the people who don't say those things and who are just being there for you. And I will also say that there is hope and peace to be found, even if you are in the middle of diagnosis, even if you never get better, even if you're never diagnosed. There are pockets of peace and hope that you can find amidst these worst of times, and so I hope that you find them.
Well, thank you guys for sharing that. I think ending on a note of hope in that, and just some reconciling some of the challenges that people have, and uniformity. As Allie has said, the book is available today, and it does chronicle a lot of stories. Her story, stories like Lindsay's, Sharon's involved in the book, and there's so many others. I learned a lot about reading about chronic illness through the book, and I think that you could as well too. And you start to develop that heart, so that when you have those questions, what do you want me to say to you? you start to feel that a little bit more, and I think it works. So this is a book that is good for those that are going through a chronic illness journey themselves, or those that are adjacent to it and are looking for ways in which to understand their experience better. So I can't recommend that enough. Our winner, our number 2 winner for a copy of the book / ebook is actually Naomi Strain. So congratulations, Naomi. You've got yourself a book. Emma is in the chat. She'll connect with you and make sure that she gets all the information that she needs to give to you. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So yeah, there's number 2. We do have a third to give away. And as part of it, and Allie, you kind of mentioned a little bit about the jewelry. So I'm going to put a little picture up on the screen a little bit. So describe the jewelry that we're giving away in response to this as well.
Well, I'm wearing it, but you might not be able to see it very well. It's a little necklace that has this gorgeous chainmail little plus on it and these earrings. And they're from Bonnie Mail, who is run by my friend Julia, and she's a wonderful person. And so these are mine. You can't have these, but there's another pair that you can have. And we met a while ago to discuss like what kind of thing could we make for like that kind of is maybe a nice symbol for people who are chronically ill. And so we came up with this plus symbol just to be like, our illnesses are part of our identity, but we're not just that, we are more than that. And so that's where that came from. They're gorgeous. Julia's amazing at making chainmail, so you can, and if you don't win, you can still go to her store and order some if you like it.
Well, in addition to the jewelry, we are giving away another copy of the book. And so in order to do that, Emma has posted a link in the chat of where to go. It's Allison's website, aealexander.com/giveaway. Over the next week, we're going to be collecting ways in which, so it's things like tweeting and things like that you can do each day, and it'll increase your odds of winning both of these things. We're very excited for that, but I got to send out some thank yous. So thank you to everyone for coming out and joining us on the live stream tonight and for playing along with the book launch for us. Thank you to those that have bought the book thus far. We have had some sales, which is wonderful. Make sure you thank Emma for all the work that she did in the chat and kept that all running nice and smooth. So thank you, Emma, for that one. By the way, you're amazing, Emma, and you should host this next time. Thank you to Lindsay and Sharon for your contributions both in the book and to tonight as well. We really appreciate you guys coming out. And Allie, thank you for writing the book. Congrats, by the way. Mm-hmm. It's over. The launch is done. Woo! Are you okay?
Did it. I'm alive.
Okay. It's time to put on pajamas on the top half now.
On the bottom half.
It's a tough endeavor, but while it is true today, I'll argue that it's true every day that stories of hope are absolutely needed. And so this is a book that highlights that. Thank you all for coming out, and we'll see you another time. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.